In the quiet corridors of Riverside, County Animal Shelter, one dog's cries cut through the stillness like a plea no. One could ignore Rex wasn't just another stray, waiting out his last hours in kennel. 23 beneath the scars and trembling form was a story too heartbreaking to imagine. A golden retriever lost and abandoned found himself at the edge of hope, destined for a fate he couldn't escape. But sometimes in the darkest moments, miracles find their way through. What happened next wasn't just about saving one life, it was about proving that even the most broken hearts can heal, and that love, patience, and courage can transform everything. Stay with us for the extraordinary journey of Rex, the dog who cried in his kennel and inspired a movement of compassion that changed countless lives forever. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the dimly lit corridor of the Riverside County Animal Shelter, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor. It was nearly midnight, and Sarah Johnson's footsteps echoed through the quiet building as she made her final rounds as a veterinary technician working the night shift. These solitary hours had become her norm over the past 3 years. At 32, Sarah hadn't planned on spending her nights this way. She dreamed of running her own veterinary practice, but life had other plans. A series of setbacks, including her mother's lengthy illness and mounting student debt, had led her to this position at the shelter. Yet somehow, working with these forgotten animals had become more than just a job. It was her calling. Tonight felt different, though. The weight of tomorrow's scheduled euthanizations pressed heavily on her chest. 7 dogs were on the list, victims of overcrowding and limited resources. Sarah had learned to steel herself against the emotional toll, but it never got easier as she approached the last row of kennels. A sound stopped her in her tracks. It wasn't the usual whimpers or barks that filled the shelter. It was something else entirely. A deep, soul-crushing SOB emerged from one of the kennels, so human-like it sent chills down her spine. Following the sound, Sarah found herself standing before Kennel 23. Inside, a golden retriever lay curled in the corner, his body shuddering with each cry. The sight broke her heart. According to his intake card, his name was Rex, and he'd been brought in 3 weeks ago after being found wandering the streets of Riverside, California. Sarah knelt before the kennel, speaking softly. "Hey there, Buddy." The dog lifted his head slightly, revealing a face marked by old scars and new wounds. His eyes, a deep amber color, held such profound sadness that Sarah felt tears welling up in her own. Pulling out her phone, she quickly snapped a photo of Rex and opened her social media account. It was against protocol to post about shelter animals without going through proper channels, but something told her this couldn't wait until morning. Rex was ed for euthanasia at 10 a.m., just hours away. "I know this is a long shot," she whispered, typing furiously, "but I'm not giving up on you." Her post was simple but urgent. Golden retriever at Riverside County Shelter needs immediate rescue, scheduled for euthanasia tomorrow morning due to behavioral concerns. Despite his scars, I see something special in his eyes. Please share. As she hit post, Sarah noticed something peculiar about Rex's intake. Notes the behavioral assessment listed him as aggressive, but the details seemed inconsistent. There were no documented incidents of aggression, only notes about him being withdrawn and defensive when approached. Quickly, Sarah spent the next hour sitting cross-legged outside Rex's kennel, talking softly about nothing. In particular, to her surprise, he gradually inched closer to the kennel door, though he maintained a careful distance. "Here, not aggressive, are you?" she mused aloud. "You're just scared." By the time her shift ended at 6 a.m., Sarah's post had been shared over 1,000 times, but no rescue organizations had committed to taking Rex, making a decision that would change both their lives. She called her supervisor morning market. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about the golden retriever in Kennel 23. Mark's voice was Sympathetic but firm Sarah we've been. Through this he's been here 3 weeks, and no one's willing to take the risk with. His history, what history, Sarah? Challenged, I've reviewed his file there. Are no actual incidents of aggression I want to adopt him, are you sure about? This your apartment complex even. Allows dogs to do I check my lease. Last night, please Mark I'll sign. Whatever waivers you need there was a long pause before Mark side come to my office when you start your shift tonight. We'll talk about it. Sarah spent the day. In a frenzy of preparation, she visited PetSmart purchasing a bed, food bowls, and other essentials. Her small one-bedroom apartment wasn't ideal, but it would have to do for now. She also called her friend, Emma, who owned a house with a fence yard on the outskirts of town. If things don't work out with my apartment, can we crash with you for a while? Of course, Emma replied without hesitation, but Sarah, are you sure about this? Taking on a traumatized dog is a huge responsibility. I know, Sarah said, watching the cashier ring up her purchases, but something about him, I just can't let him die without trying. That evening, Sarah arrived at work early. Mark was waiting in his office with a stack of papers, liability waivers, and adoption forms. As she signed them, he voiced his concerns. One last time, Sarah, I know you have a big heart, but this dog has serious issues. The scars, his behavior, he's probably been through hell. Are you prepared for what that might mean? Sarah met his gaze steadily. I am, and I think that's exactly why I need to do this. Getting Rex into her car proved to be the first challenge. He refused to walk on a leash, his body trembling violently at any attempt to touch him. Finally, with infinite patience and gentle coaxing, Sarah managed to guide him into the back seat where he pressed himself against the door as far from her as possible. The drive home was tense. Every time Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror, she found those amber eyes watching her. She talked softly the entire way, telling Rex about his new home and promising him he was safe. Now her apartment was on the second floor of a modest complex in a quiet neighborhood. Getting Rex up the stairs was another ordeal that took nearly an hour. By the time they made it inside, Sarah was exhausted, but her work was just beginning. Rex immediately retreated to the farthest corner of the living room, wedging himself between the wall and a bookshelf. Sarah set up his bed nearby along with water and food bowls, then sat on the couch with a book, pretending to read while actually watching him from the corner of her eye. The first few days were harder than Sarah had imagined. Rex refused to eat while she was in the room, only touching his food in the middle of the night. He flinched at every sudden movement and sound. The sight of a leash sent him into a panic, making even brief potty breaks an ordeal. Sarah began leaving her television on low volume continuously, hoping the constant background noise would help Rex adjust to normal household sounds. She also started talking to him, constantly narrating her activities as she moved around the apartment. I'm just going to the kitchen to make some coffee, Rex. Nothing to worry about, or time for me to take a shower. I'll be right back. A week into their new life together, SAR noticed something strange. A black SUV had been parked across the street for several hours, and she could swear she'd seen the same vehicle the day before. When she mentioned it to her neighbor, Mrs. Emma, the elderly woman confirmed she noticed it too. They were asking about your dog yesterday, Mrs. Emma added, frowning too. Men, they said they were from animal control, but they didn't have uniforms or badges. Sarah's blood ran cold that night. She called the police to report the suspicious vehicle, but it was gone by the time they arrived. The officer took her statement, but seemed skeptical of her concerns. Ma'am, are you sure you're not being paranoid? Maybe they're just interested in the neighborhood, but Sarah's instincts told her otherwise. The next day, she installed additional locks on her doors and windows and called Emma. Can you help me move some things to your place this weekend? I think Rex and I need to relocate sooner rather than later. Emma agreed without hesitation. I'll bring my truck on Saturday, but Sarah, maybe you should tell the shelter about those men if Rex was involved in something illegal. I know, Sarah Interrupted, "I'll talk to Mark tomorrow." That night, Sarah's worst fears were realized. She woke around 2 a.m. to Rex's low growl, a sound she'd never heard from him before. In the darkness, she could make out his form standing rigidly by the living room window, hackles raised. Then she heard the subtle sound of someone trying to force her patio door open. Sarah's heart pounded as she reached for her phone. Rex's growl grew louder, more threatening. There was a crash as the lock gave way and the door began to slide open. What happened next would forever change Sarah's perception of her aggressive deed. Rex launched himself toward the intruder. His earlier fear transformed into fierce protectiveness. His barking was deafening in a small apartment, and Sarah heard a male voice curse, followed by the sound of running footsteps. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was long gone. They found signs of forced entry, but little else. The officer taking Sarah's statement seemed more interested this time, especially when she mentioned the suspicious SUV. "There's been a series of break-ins in the area," he explained, "but this is the first time the perpetrator has been scared off your dog. Probably saved your life." Sarah looked at Rex, who had returned to his corner but remained alert, watching the officers. Wearily, for the first time, she saw his scars in a different light. They weren't just marks of abuse, they were badges of survival. The next day, Sarah took a personal day from work and drove to Emma's house with Rex. The property sat on 2 acres of land just outside the city limits, with a sturdy fence surrounding the backyard. Emma had already prepared a room for Sarah and set up a dog bed in the corner. "Stay as long as you need," Emma insisted, helping Sarah unload her car. Besides, Rex might like having some space to run. Over the next few weeks, Rex began to show subtle signs of transformation. The safety and routine of Emma's quiet home seemed to calm him. Sarah would sit on the back porch each evening watching his Rex gradually ventured further into the yard, his curiosity slowly overcoming his fear. The breakthrough came one sunny afternoon, about a month after they'd moved in. Sarah was reading on the porch swing when she felt something warm against her leg. Looking down, she found Rex sitting beside her, his head tentatively resting against her knee, fighting back tears. Sarah remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. After a few moments, she slowly lowered her hand, palm up beside him. Rex studied it for a long moment before gently pressing his nose against her fingers. From that day forward, Rex's progress accelerated. He began seeking out Sarah's company, following her around the house like a shadow. His tail, which had remained tucked between his legs for so long, started to wag. Occasionally, he even allowed Emma to approach him, though he remained cautious around strangers. Sarah's investigation into Rex's past finally yielded results when Mark called her one evening. "Remember those men who were asking about Rex? Police just arrested a group running a dog fighting ring in San Bernardino. They found pictures of Rex in their files." The news hit Sarah hard, but it explains so much. Rex's scars, his fear of men, his defensive behavior. It also made his gradual transformation even more remarkable as weeks turned into months. Rex continued to blossom. Sarah eventually found a job at a local veterinary clinic that allowed her to bring him to work. To everyone's surprise, Rex showed a particular gentleness with other injured and frightened animals. One day, a badly injured stray cat was brought in. While other dogs would have been excited or aggressive, Rex lay quietly nearby, watching with what seemed like empathy as the veterinarians worked to save it. When the cat was recovering in its cage, Rex would sit beside it, offering silent companionship. He knows what it's like, Sarah explained to her curious coworkers. He understands their pain. A year after rescue, Sarah organized a special event at the shelter where she used to work. She called it Second Chance Sunday, and it featured Rex as the ambassador for Harto Place dogs. The once fearful golden retriever now approached potential adopters with cautious friendliness, his tail wagging gently, Sarah shared Rex's story with visitors, showing before and after photos that demonstrated his incredible transformation. She emphasized the import of looking beyond initial impressions and giving animals time to overcome their trauma. The event was a huge success. Every difficulto-placed dog in the shelter found a home that day, including several that had been scheduled for euthanasia. Local news covered the story and Rex's journey from death. Wrote, a therapy dog touched hearts across the community. Emma eventually sold Sarah a portion of her property at a friend's price, and Sarah built a small house there. The large yard became a safe haven not just for Rex, but for other dogs in need of rehabilitation. Sarah started a small rescue organization specializing in cases like Rex's dogs that other shelters had deemed unadoptable. Rex proved to be an excellent mentor for these troubled souls. He seemed to understand exactly what each dog needed: space, encouragement, or gentle guidance. Sarah often found him lying beside newly arrived dogs, offering the same silent comfort he'd once received. 3 years after that fateful night at the shelter, Sarah sat on her front porch watching Rex play with a recent rescue, a scarred pit bull who'd arrived terrified of his own shadow. Rex guided the younger dog through the yard, showing him it was safe to explore, safe to play, safe to trust again. Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she remembered the broken dog she'd found in Kennel 23. Rex had taught her so much about resilience, forgiveness, and the incredible capacity for healing that exists in all living beings. His journey from victim to protector, from frightened survivor to confident mentor, was a testament to the transformative power of patience and love. That evening, as the sun set over their peaceful sanctuary, Rex climbed onto the porch and settled beside Sarah's chair, resting his graying muzzle on her lap. His amber eyes, once filled with such sadness, now shone with contentment and trust. Sarah ran her fingers through his soft fur, feeling the raised lines of his scars, permanent reminders of his past that no longer defined his future. You're a good boy, Rex, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Such a good boy. Rex's tail thumped against the porch boards, and he let out a soft sigh of contentment. In that moment, Sarah realized that while she might have saved Rex's life that night at the shelter, he had saved her too. He'd given her life purpose and direction, showing her that sometimes the most broken beings have the most to give. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sarah thought about all the dogs still waiting in shelters, hoping for their own miracle. Thanks to Rex, many of them would get their chance. His legacy would live on through every animal they helped, every life they touched, every second chance they offered. The story of Rex, the crying dog in Kennel 23, who became a beacon of hope, would continue to inspire others to look past the scars and fear to see the potential for love and healing that exists in every heart, no matter how damaged it might seem. And as Rex dozed beside her, safe and LD, Sarah knew that sometimes the most incredible happenings aren't dramatic rescues or sudden transformations, but the quiet daily victories of a heart learning to trust again, one small step at a time.